Chapter 1793. Leave, never come back. 3. What happened in that short period of time just now? Why did the marriage alliance that they had happily agreed to fail? Could it be that little junior sister really had a marriage contract with someone? Who was the one who had a marriage contract with little junior sister? On the summit of the Danyang mountain range, Luo Yunxiao looks at the heart-shaped mark on the back of his hand, his eyes filled with fear. He was standing very far away from the valley, otherwise he would have been discovered by Di Mingju long ago. He could clearly see what was happening there, but he couldn't hear the voices coming from there. Luo Yunxiao didn't stay here to witness anything with his own eyes. He was just reluctant to leave, reluctant to abandon the last glimmer of hope. However, the scene of Di Mingju and Muyan forming a marriage contract and becoming a couple from then on did not happen. Clearly, there was a shocking change in the valley. The red line that flew out from the Stone of Destiny, after entering Muyan's body, was bounced out. Luo Yunxiao had seen the contract in front of the three-live stone. So he clearly knew that the marriage contract between Di Mingju and Muyan had failed. But why did it fail? The heavenly Tao would never deliberately separate fated people. Among the immortals, there was no such thing as a match or not. As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, Luo Yunxiao felt his chest heat up. Then, a heart-shaped mark slowly appeared on the back of his hand. Kai Wen's cultivation wasn't as high as Luo Yunxiao's, and her divine sense and eyesight weren't as good as his. Standing so far away, she could only vaguely see the lake and waterfall of the valley. So she was completely unaware of Luo Yunxiao's shock. Noticing that the heart-shaped mark on the back of Luo Yunxiao's hand had lit up, Kai Wen exclaimed, "Hey, it's a marriage contract." Why did it suddenly light up? Could it be that the Demon Lord's daughter who was stranded outside is also nearby? Luo Yunxiao's eyes suddenly widened, and his pupils contracted. His rapid breathing made his chest unconsciously heave up and down. He asked in a hoarse voice, "Kai Wen, what did you just say?" "Kai Wen, the marriage contract that Yin Wuji arranged for you and the Demon Lord's daughter is the highest level of the three-live stone. Within 3 years, as long as the marriage contract has not expired, the fates of the two of you will be linked together. If she activates the one-heart seal for some reason, the one-heart seal on your side will also be triggered." As Kai Wen spoke, she scratched her head. "Master, don't you already know about this? Why are you asking me?" Master, what happened to you?" Why was his expression so strange? It seemed sad and happy at the same time. It was as if he had caught a glimmer of hope, but also as if he was deeply afraid of an irrecoverable ending. After a long time, he slowly closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, his expression had already returned to normal, and he had turned back into the bright and clear young Master Yun Xiao. Seeing him turn around and step onto the flying sword, Kai Wen hurriedly rushed over. "Master, aren't you going to watch? Could it be that my Yanyan's engagement had ended? Where are you going, Master?" Luo Yunxiao gazed into the distance and murmured, "I want to return to the Shoshan continent to confirm some things." No matter what, he had to know the identity of the woman he was engaged to. Who exactly is the daughter of Zhun Shitian, the Devil Lord? As soon as Muyan enters the room, she immediately asks Qi Huang, "What's going on? Why is there a marriage contract on me? I haven't lost my memory, so I can be sure. Since I was a child, I have never married anyone, nor have I had any marriage contract. Could it be that a marriage contract can be made without my consent?" Chapter 1794. Leave, never come back. 4. Qi Huang had a gloating look on his face. "How would I know why? But the situation you're talking about is not impossible. Did you see Di Mingju's expression just now? It's like he's going to tear the adulterer's body into pieces. It's a pity that the pretty boy Luo Yunxiao isn't here, otherwise I can let Xiao Bao and Little Phoenix provoke Di Mingju into killing him. Ha 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 ha." Mu Yang presses the throbbing veins on her forehead, gritting her teeth. "Qi Huang, do you want to die?" She enters the space in a flash, staring coldly at the red-clothed youngster in front of her. At this time, "Are you sure you want to provoke me again?" Qi Huang shrinks his neck, finally restraining himself a little. "Actually, it's not a big deal. Isn't it just a marriage alliance? Is there a need to make such a fuss? Little Phoenix weakly interrupts, I heard Brother Bai Xie say that if they can't make a marriage alliance, the Di Mingju can only be a lover and adulterer for a lifetime. The emperor can only be a concubine and adulterer for the rest of his life, unable to see the light of day at all. His title is not legitimate, how pitiful. What lover and adulterer? What can't see the light of day? What kind of damned adjective is Bai Xie? Mu Yang simply can't suppress the urge to beat her own son, the sword spirit. Qi Huang bursts into laughter, that lousy sword spirit finally has the appearance of a tool spirit. To actually compare the dignified Di Mingju to a lover and adulterer, ha ha ha, too funny. Qi Xiao Huang. Alright, I'll tell you, alright. Seven Brilliants said, if your parents had tied a marriage fate line on you when you were born, you wouldn't be able to marry them. Then, with your name, date of birth, and an object that has been stained with your aura, go to the three-live stone and make a contract with another person. Then the marriage line on your body will automatically be bound to that man. So, the marriage agreement will be formed. Mu Yang is dumbfounded, you don't need my consent. And I don't know anything about it. Qi Huang spread his hands. This is a method that parents came up with in ancient times when they wanted to reunite with their children who had been separated from them. Because once the marriage line is tied, it will guide the two parties of the marriage agreement to meet. This is also a disguised form of looking for a daughter through a son-in-law. The corner of Mu Yang's mouth twitches, in order to find me, my parents sold me. Little Phoenix clenched his fists angrily. Brother Bai Xie said that arranged marriages are not good, it's feudal and stubborn, we must fight back, we must support the freedom of love. Qi Huang said nonchalantly, so what? Isn't it just a marriage certificate? When we find your parents, we can take the marriage certificate back to the three-live stone to cancel the marriage contract. I don't know what's wrong with that Di Mingju, actually making such a fuss about nothing. Mu Yang sighs softly and turns to leave the space. Before she left, she gently waved her hand and completely sealed the space. I want to be alone for a while. There was no light in the pitch-black room. She lay on the bed with her clothes on, quietly looking at the dark ceiling. Thinking of Di Mingju's resolute departing figure, her nose feels slightly sour, and her eyes slowly become moist. Although he looked so relaxed in front of Seven Brilliants and Little Phoenix. However, Di Mingju's resolute departure still hurts her heart. She had thought that he was the person who understood her the most in the world. However, he didn't believe in her. Mu Yang slowly closes her eyes and softly whispers in a low, hoarse voice, Bastard, if you have the ability to leave, then never come back. Worst comes to worst, this miss will go find my fiancé, and both of us will return home. Oh. Chapter 1795. Believe it or not, asking for tickets, the moonlight coming in from the window sways. Mu Yang suddenly feels a heavy pressure on her body. Immediately after, her hands are raised high above her head, and a fiery kiss falls down like a storm. Scalding lips and tongues, reeking of alcohol and madness, as if they want to swallow her whole. At first, Mu Yang still wants to struggle, but she slowly sinks into the man's familiar breath, and her resistance turns into response. After a long, long time, the red, swollen, numb lips are released. The man buries his head in the crook of her neck, his voice hoarse and broken, Yang Yang, don't leave me, okay? Mu Yang comes back to herself and gives him a firm shove, but she can't push him away. She can't help but grit her teeth. Di Mingju, at the engagement just now, who was the first to leave who? This bastard is now acting pitiful in front of her, saying this kind of thing, doesn't his conscience hurt? Di Mingju raises his head, his crimson eyes carrying a hint of drunkenness as he looks at her. There's a raging flame of madness burning in his eyes. Jun Mu Yang, even if you have an engagement, even if you love someone else in your heart, I will never let you go. Absolutely impossible. Mu Yang originally wants to get angry. However, the man's eyes are really too heart-wrenching, lung-splitting pain, making her whole heart tremble. She swallows back the words that are on the tip of her tongue. She reaches out a hand and gently presses it on the man's face. Idiot, there's only one person I love in my heart. That person is called Di Mingju, when will you understand? She repeats what Qi Huang said to Di Mingju. It's probably my father or mother. They made an engagement for me with someone else, and wanted to find me, this daughter, through that person. I will never recognize this kind of engagement. As long as I find my father or mother and take back the marriage certificate, then the engagement will naturally be dissolved. Di Ming-ju stares blankly for a long time, then he says softly, "Your parents' names?" Mu Yang frowns. "My adoptive father told me that my father's name is Jun Shiyuan, and that he had once ascended from the Yenwu continent to the Shozhen continent. As for my mother, even my adoptive father doesn't know her identity and origin." Di Ming-ju gnashes his teeth as he repeats the 3 words Jun Shiyuan. "Ben Jun will go look for him." Mu Yang coldly stares at him. "Do you believe me now?" Di Ming-ju suddenly lowers his eyes, and reaches out to hold her tightly in his arms. "Yang, it's not that I don't believe you. I don't believe in myself. There is one thing that Mu Yang doesn't know. The marriage contract on the stone of predestination cannot be formed. Apart from the fact that Mu Yan's parents have already given her a marriage contract, there is another possibility. That is, the husband that Mu Yang said was already dead, Xiao Bao's biological father, did not die." Di Ming-ju has never been able to forget that Mu Yan said that the one she loves is Xiao Bao's father. If that person did not die, if that person came back, what would Mu Yan choose? Would she go back to that man? Would Xiao Bao be closer to his biological father? As soon as he thinks of this possibility, Di Ming-ju can't control his crazed killing intent, as well as the heart-tearing and lung-splitting pain. No. Mu Yang is his wife, and Xiao Bao is his child. He will never allow anyone to take away his loved ones. In fact, Mu Yan already knows that the reason why Di Ming-ju chose to leave was because he was afraid that her rampaging divine power would hurt him and the people of Hellflame Valley. But being abandoned like that, her heart still throbbed with pain. "Azi, Jun Shong, are you pleasantly surprised? Are you surprised? Are you stimulated? Jun Shong, you're courting death. Azi, Jun Shong Daran, this is all fate, you'll just have to accept it." Chapter 1796. Is she kneeling on a durian? 1. Di Ming-ju. She holds the man's face, and enunciates each word. "In the future, you're not allowed to not believe me, you're not allowed to just leave me or back. I won't allow it, do you hear me?" Di Ming-ju presses his hand on the back of her hand, his fingers gently caressing the place where the heart mark appeared. "Jun Mu Yan, no matter who appears in the future, no matter what happens, you are my, Di Ming-ju's wife. You absolutely cannot leave me. I won't allow it, do you hear me?" 2 pairs of eyes silently mingle in the darkness. Di Ming-ju slowly leans down, and drops a kiss between Mu Yan's eyebrows. "I'm sorry, Yang, I shouldn't have left you. In the future, I won't do it again." Mu Yan coldly snorts. "There's still a future?" The girl's brows are picturesque like a poem. When she's slightly angry, her long eyelashes gently tremble, and the corners of her eyes are slightly curved. In those misty eyes, there seems to be a small hook hooking at Di Ming-ju's soul, making his breathing quicken. Di Ming-ju props himself up with one hand, his other hand caressing her cheek. He lowers his head and gently kisses her. It's just that, before he can seize those soft red lips again, he feels a great force coming at him from below. Mu Yan directly uses her spiritual power to kick him off the bed. With Di Ming-ju's cultivation, of course he wouldn't fall to the ground in a sorry state. However, the fiery gushing tide of passion is interrupted, and Jun Shongdaran's eyes dangerously narrow. A strong plunder that wants to devour people directly flows out of his eyes. Mu Yan's hair stands on end from the man's gaze. However, she quickly composes herself. Her red clothes sweep past, and she lazily leans against the bed. She looks at the man in front of her with a smile that isn't a smile. "Di Ming-ju, you wouldn't think that you could come back so easily after turning around and leaving, right?" Di Ming-ju takes a step closer, his deep eyes unblinking as he looks at her. "Then what does Yang want from Ben Jun?" Mu Yan's mouth curls up, and her eyes reveal a sly smile. She swings her hand and throws out a spirit fruit covered in thorns. In Bailey Liuin's notes, it was mentioned that in her world, if a husband offended his wife, he would be punished to kneel on a keyboard and durian. Mu Yang had never heard of these two things, a keyboard or a durian. But that didn't stop her from finding something to substitute from Bailey Lewin's description. For example, a washboard. Another example was the spiritual fruit called the golden body fruit, which was covered with shadow spikes. As soon as Di Mingju saw the golden body fruit, his eyelids twitched. This was simply preposterous. He was the polar domain sovereign emperor. If others saw him kneeling on a washboard and kneeling on a golden body fruit, would he still have any face? Di Mingju's eyebrows jump as he remembers that he was almost seen by the shadow demon last time. Mu Yang raises the corner of her lips, her smile becoming more and more charming. What? Is Juanshang Daren unwilling to accept the punishment? This monarch accepts. Accept. Di Mingju gnashes his teeth. What was face worth? How could his wife be more important? Mu Yang couldn't help but burst out laughing. Her peach blossom eyes were misty and her pearl-like cheeks were suffused with a rosy red. Her entire person exuded a captivating charm. She stood up from the bed and wanted to put away the golden body fruit. Seeing that Juanshang Daren was so obedient, she wouldn't torment him. The two people's movements just now caused the lapel of Mu Yang's red dress to slightly open, revealing her fair and delicate collarbone. Those alluring lines slowly meander into the open lapel. Chapter 1797. Is this a durian? 2. The red clothes set off the skin of ice and bones of jade, white and tender like frost, creamy like jade. Di Mingju's eyes suddenly deepen, his Adam's apple silently rolls up and down. In the depths of his eyes, there's a blazing flame that can't be suppressed. Muyan just got up, but a hot palm suddenly clasps her wrist. Then, the world spins before her eyes, and her whole body is thrown onto the bed. The tall and heavy body presses down, and both hands are pressed on top of her head again. The man's eyes firmly hold her, like he's staring at his proudest prey, wishing he could immediately swallow her into his belly. Muyan's whole body suddenly tenses up, her throat dry. Di Mingju, what are you doing? In any case, I'm going to be punished. The man's voice is hoarse and hot, low and dangerous. Ben Jun, I'll collect the interest first. Oh. Di Mingju, you, call Ben Jun's name. Yang Yu, Yang. Say it again. Ah, bastard. Say it again. Yang Yu, Jun Muyan, I love you. You must always remember, you belong to me. Xiao Bao's eyes are red and a little swollen. Early in the morning, he stands outside Muyan's room, hesitating to go in. The fat rabbit nestles in his arms, gently licking his hand, as if to comfort him. Bai Xie sighs in his mind, there's no justice in this ancient arranged marriage system. Not only can they arrange a marriage, but they also don't need to show up in person to get the marriage certificate. It's simply breaking up the fated people. The point is, his thick golden thigh is also gone. It's simply too sad, okay? Xiao Bao's little face tightens, panting with anger. I don't want to talk to Daddy anymore. Daddy is a big scoundrel, he left Xiao Bao and Mommy. As he speaks, his eyes redden again. His heart really feels extremely sad, extremely wronged. He thought that he would finally have a complete family, with Daddy and Mommy. But it turns out that it's just a dream. Did his father not want him anymore? Doesn't want Mommy anymore? Bai Xie and the fat rabbit were also affected by Xiao Bao's emotions, they also became depressed. At this moment, the door creaked. Mu Yang's somewhat lazy and hoarse voice came from inside the house. Xiao Bao, come in. Hearing Mu Yang's voice, Xiao Bao's eyes immediately lit up, and he ran in. Mother, don't be sad. Before he could finish, his neck suddenly twisted 90 degrees. He looked at the corner of the house. Raw. Oh my God. When he saw this scene, even little Bao's face that had always been icy cold was shocked to the point it was on the verge of warping. His little mouth was wide open and his blue eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. After a long time, Xiao Bao stiffly turns around to look at Muyan. He was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. Little Treasure could even hear the cracking sounds coming from his neck. Mother, a trace of embarrassment flits across Mu Yang's face. She originally didn't want to torment Di Mingju. In the end, this man was like a mad beast on the bed last night, torturing her between life and death. Mu Yang immediately threw her reluctance to feed the dog. The point is, when this bastard went to kneel on the golden body fruit, Mu Yang was worried that the barbs on the golden body fruit would hurt Di Mingju, so she couldn't help but go over to take a look. In the end, this shameless man pulled her into his arms, and with a kneeling position, he fiercely kisses her. Chapter 1798. Is he kneeling on a durian? 3 inches the end, he whispers in her ear in a low voice. On the golden body fruit, it's not bad. Yang Yang, next time, should we try your ass? Di Mingju, you bastard, don't you have any shame? Muyan blushes and kicks the man away, gritting her teeth. If you like it so much, then kneel on the golden body fruit until the end of time. At this time, she hears Xiao Bao's sad voice outside the room. Facing Xiao Bao's shocked expression, Muyan still hasn't thought of how to answer. The Bishie sword buzzed as it flew out. It laughed and said, "Aya, little master, what else is there to ask? It's obvious that the husband and wife had a fight and reconciled. Oh my, so there are durians in this era, ha ha ha, hey, is this a durian?" Bai Xie is laughing heartily. Di Mingju glances at him, and the laughter stops abruptly. Bai Xie shivers and murmurs, "How can someone kneel on a durian with the aura of a dragon throne? Are you going to let us lowly commoners live?" Muyan can't help but look at the Bishie sword in surprise. Bai Xie actually knows about durians. And many of the things he said are very similar to the notes left by Bailey Liuyin. Is Bai Xie not a real sword spirit? But from the same world as Bailey Liuyin? When the people of the Xiaoyaro sect and the Netherfire army see Di Mingju coming out of Muyan's room, they are shocked. But soon, the shock turns into joy. It's great that Muyan and Di Mingju are back together. Yesterday, Di Mingju's terrifying aura made the people of the Xiaoyaro sect and the Netherfire army unable to sleep well. They were afraid that he would hurt Muyan because of his anger. Now that they saw that they were more intimate than before, they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Of course, the happiest among them are Han Yi and Ying Mai. They were driven out of the Netherfire Valley together with Xing Lang. They can only guard outside the valley anxiously, not daring to barge in. No one knows Di Mingju's feelings for Muyan better than them. If the two of them were to break off, if Miss Jun really had a husband, they did not dare to imagine what Jun Shong would do. Kill the adulterer? Or to imprison Miss Jun forever? In the end, two people who love each other turn against each other. In short, no matter what the result was, it was not what they wanted to see. Now that he sees that Di Mingju and Muyan have reconciled after just one night, Han Yi cries out in joy on the spot. The rims of Ying Mai's eyes are also a little red. Among Di Mingju's subordinates, she has the deepest feelings for Mu Yang. If Muyan and Di Mingju were to really break their relationship, the torment in her heart would simply be worse than being flayed alive. Only Xing Lang was still somewhat indignant that Muyan was already engaged. But after Bai Xie explained the possible origin of this marriage, Lin Fan was stunned. Only then did Xing Lang restrain his emotions. With a sour face, he says, "Jun Muyan, is that father of yours blind? Is there any man more outstanding than Jun Shong in this world? He actually booked you to someone else. What broken pretty boy, could it be that he can even be mentioned in the same breath as our Jun Shong? What an ignorant, stupid, idiot." Muyan doesn't feel the slightest bit of psychological burden towards her father, whom she has never met, being scolded. She also feels very irritable. Okay, what kind of father is this? Inexplicably arranging a marriage for her, and she doesn't even know who that man is. Chapter 1799. You are not my father, I do not know you. If he wanted to find her, couldn't he find a more normal way? Han Yi coughs lightly, restraining himself from laughing. Jun Shong, since Miss Jun's engagement was established on the Three-Live Stone, that means that Miss Jun's father is bound to be in the Shoshian continent. Even Di Mingju is unable to take the Real Stone of 3 Lives from the Shoshian continent. The only thing he could bring to the cultivation continent was a fragment of the 3 live stone, the Fate Stone. However, with the fate-determining stone, it was impossible to obtain the recognition of the heavenly Tao and establish a marriage contract without going through the person themselves. Only the marriage line and the 8 characters of the 8 trigrams could be used to obtain the recognition of the heavenly Tao. Therefore, it can be inferred that there is a 90% chance that Muyan's biological father is in the Xiuxian continent. Han Yi and Xing Lang are immediately eager to give it a try. Jun Shong, Miss, rest assured, with our polar domain's forces, we'll definitely be able to find that blind man, Miss Jun's father. Even the man who dared to steal their Jun Shong's wife. Once I find him, I must tear that pretty boy into pieces. This shocking change finally came to an end in a way that everyone was happy with. However, there was only one person who kept a straight face and did not smile at all. Di Mingju's unperturbed expression, which has always been in the grasp of heaven and earth, finally shows a crack. He casts a pleading look towards Muyan. Ever since Xiao Bao saw Di Mingju in Muyan's room, apart from the initial shock, he never paid attention to him again. He didn't even give him a look. On this point, Mu Yang is also powerless to help. Although Xiao Bao was only 5 years old, he had always been a very precocious child. Ever since they were still in the jungle, when mother and son depended on each other, this little boy had always been the one taking care of her. Perhaps it was because he had experienced too much when he was in her womb. Therefore, Xiao Bao had always been very insecure. In fact, apart from her, Xiao Bao couldn't truly open his heart to anyone else. Di Mingju is the second. But now, because of his resolute departing figure, Xiao Bao closed the door to his heart that had been wide open. Di Mingju frowns. He suddenly steps forward in large strides and picks Xiao Bao up. Xiao Bao's whole body soars into the air. At first, he's startled, but when he finds out that the one picking him up is Di Mingju, he immediately kicks his short legs and hands, shouting, "Scoundrel, let me go." Di Mingju doesn't care about what he's saying. He teleports and hugs Muyan, disappearing on the spot. By the time Xiao Bao comes back to his senses, he discovers that Di Mingju has unexpectedly brought him and his mother to the top of a mountain. This was probably the highest peak in the Danyang mountain range. There was a chill in the air. Looking down from here, one could see the endless mountains and rivers, as well as the vast woodfern sea. Beneath his feet were towering green mountains, yellow soil, and rocks, as well as misty white clouds. Little Treasure was a little stunned. He had never seen such a scene in his life. It wasn't beautiful or dreamy, but it was magnificent. It was as if it could wash away all the passion in his chest. The mountains of the polar domain are 100 times higher than here. The scenery of the polar domain is also 100 times more beautiful than here. Di Mingju's deep and magnetic voice enters her ears. Xiao Bao's ears twitch, but he strives to keep his little face taut, not even looking at him. "Jun Morchen, I'm talking to you." Di Mingju lowers his voice. Xiao Bao purses his lips, his cheeks slightly bulging. "You're not my father, I don't know you, and I'm not going to talk to you." Di Mingju lowers his head, looking down at him from above. His eyes carry the fury of a storm. "If I'm not your father, then who do you want to recognize as your father?" Chapter 1800. You're not my father, I don't know you, too. Being reprimanded by Di Mingju like this, the rims of Xiao Bao's eyes turn red. The grievances that have been accumulating for 2 days pour out all at once. But he firmly clenches his teeth, not letting himself show weakness, and not letting himself cry. Daddy won't abandon Yang Qin and Xiao Bao. Daddy won't abandon Xiao Bao, and even more, he won't abandon Yang Qin. You're a bad person, you're not my daddy. Despite his desperate efforts to hold back, the tears still fall from his eyes. Xiao Bao's entire little body is twitching from grievance. His 2 watery blue eyes are swollen like walnuts. Muyan's heart aches. She wants to step forward, but in the end, she still shrinks her footsteps and quietly watches from the side. Xiao Bao cries and wipes his tears. However, the more tears he wipes, the harder it is to suppress the grievances in his heart. Just when he's so sad that he wants to throw himself into his mother's arms and cry, a big hand suddenly presses on his head, gently rubbing it. Then, he hears his father's usually cold and dignified voice, carrying a trace of depression and lack of confidence. "It's not that Daddy doesn't want you and young Qin. Daddy is just afraid." Afraid? Xiao Bao stares blankly, and he can't help but raise his head, only to find that the tall, unreachable man has crouched down in front of him. The big hand is still softly pressing on the back of his head. Xiao Bao has never seen Di Mingju show such a gentle, tolerant, and apologetic look towards him. For a moment, he's somewhat dazed, and he can't help but blurt out, "Afraid of what?" "Afraid that your young Qin will marry another man." After a pause, Di Mingju continues in a low, husky voice, "And afraid that Xiao Bao will think that it's better to let someone else be your father." "That won't happen." Xiao Bao doesn't even think about it before shouting, "Daddy is the best in the world. There's no one better than Daddy." For a moment, Di Mingju feels a warm current welling up inside his body. It makes his nose sour, and his eyes dry up. He really likes this child. It's not just because of Muyin. But Di Mingju's voice becomes even softer, so soft that even Xiao Bao can't hear it. "If one day your biological father appears, will Xiao Bao choose him and not father?" Di Mingju's expression is too sorrowful and mournful, making Xiao Bao's ignorant heart tighten all at once. All of a sudden, he doesn't want to think about anything, and throws himself into Di Mingju's arms, tightly hugging his neck. "Daddy is Daddy, there's no biological father. Xiao Bao only wants Daddy." Mu Yang, who was at the side, looked at the scene of the father and son hugging each other. Her eyes were filled with tears, but the corners of her mouth hooked up into a warm smile. Di Mingju stands up, withdrawing his hand from Xiao Bao's head. His loss of composure just now made him feel a little embarrassed and annoyed. Xiao Bao is regretting why his father doesn't continue to stroke his head, just like his mother. Then she heard the man's dignified voice, "No matter what, I'm your father." In the future, even if he lost his temper, he was not allowed to say that he didn't want his father anymore. "Otherwise, I'll beat your ass until it blossoms. Do you hear me?" Xiao Bao purses his lips and throws himself into Muyin's arms. He complains loudly, "Nyang Qin, Daddy is bad. Daddy wants to hit Xiao Bao. We'll ignore him." Muyin bursts into laughter. She picks up the little plump boy who already has some weight, and says with a smile, "All right, we'll ignore him." Xiao Bao's brows immediately fly up. That pair of blue eyes that are still swollen are sparkling, like they're bearing the stars of a summer night. Chapter 1801. Ling Yusheng's Nightmare 1. However, before he could wrap his hand around Muyin's neck, she was then lifted up by the back of the collar. "You're such an adult and you still want Nyang Qin to carry you? Fly back by yourself." After that, an invisible flying sword appeared under his feet. Di Mingju pulls Muyin into his arms, and together they step on the flying sword. Completely ignoring the shocked and hurt look in his son's eyes, he flew out with a whoosh. However, compared to his teleportation just now, he was obviously flying on his sword leisurely this time. "Bad Daddy. Give my mother back to me." Xiao Bao angrily stomped his feet, stepped on by Xie and followed behind. His little face was filled with anger. Bastard father, Xiao Bao doesn't need to pay attention to him for 3 days. He needs to quickly become stronger and snatch his mother away from his father. Muyin nestles in Di Mingju's arms, raising her head to look at the man's grave and stern face. The smile on her face becomes more and more brilliant. "Di Mingju, are you feeling embarrassed for revealing your true feelings to Xiao Bao?" Di Mingju snorts. Ben Jun is merely educating his son. Muyin humphed, stubborn. Di Mingju lowers his head and directly seals her lips, a muffled voice echoing between their lips and teeth. "Whether Ben Jun's mouth is hard or not, isn't Yang Yang the clearest?" "Bastard. Rogue." Mu Yang ruthlessly elbowed him with a backhand. Then, she turned her head to take a look. Seeing that Xiao Bao's Bixia sword had caught up with her, she heaved a sigh of relief. The 2 flying swords whistled through the air one after the other, leaving a trail of white light. From time to time, there would be sounds of cursing and laughter. Time was peaceful, and the world was stable. This should be the case. Tsungyun City. Ling Yusheng came out of the treasure pill pavilion alone with a satisfied expression on his face. The time for the 3 teams that had left the Azure Blue Realm to go to the Purple Cloud Realm's Dragon Soar Academy to participate in the Dear Cry banquet was getting closer and closer. During this period of time, Ling Yusheng felt that his domain had reached a critical point. He had a feeling that once he awakened his domain, he would reach a completely different realm. Today, he came to the Pearl Pill Pavilion, mainly to change his weapon. Ling Yusheng usually used the most ordinary needles in battle, as well as ordinary threads mixed with obsidian crystals. The obsidian crystal made the thread more tenacious and could bind up cultivators below the 5th level of Jindan. However, cultivators at the 5th level of the Golden Core Realm and above could easily break his threads. Therefore, Ling Yusheng asked for obsidian crystals from his junior sister and found a evil Typha tree. He gave it to the master of the True Pill Pavilion to forge his new weapon. The bark of the demonic Typha tree could be peeled off with a special knife, mixed with obsidian crystals, and refined into an extremely tough, demon-binding silk. As for the evil Typha tree, its leaves were needle-shaped and were harder than iron or stone. Adding the demon-absorbing needles made from black crystals, it was almost invincible for anyone below the peak of Gold Core Realm. These 2 kinds of needles and thread were extremely difficult to make. Ling Yusheng had already gone in and out of the Pill Treasure Pavilion several times, destroying several evil Typha trees and several pieces of black dazzling crystals. This time, he finally succeeded. Just as Ling Yusheng put away the demon-absorbing needles and demon-binding silk, he heard a vulgar voice behind him. Mingzhu said that you were in the Starry School, but I didn't believe it at first. I didn't think that you would really dare to come back. Ha ha ha, Ling Yusheng, do you miss the taste of me? Ling Yusheng's body suddenly trembled, and his eyes suddenly turned blood red. Chapter 1802. Ling Yusheng's Nightmare, 2. He would never forget this voice for the rest of his life. Wei Yongjin. Ling Yusheng turned around slowly. A shifty-eyed, greasy face entered his eyes. His stomach churned, and his face paled. The feeling of disgust, hatred, and disgust stirred up all the spiritual power in his body, almost exploding. This person, this voice, this face, he would never forget it. At that time, Ouyang Mingzhu had framed him. Due to a freak combination of factors, he and Ouyang Qing had a wild night together. Ling Yusheng still remembered the heat and pain of that night. But thinking that the person on top of him was the man he had silently loved for so many years, the sweetness of sorrow in his heart washed away the pain in his body. But when he woke up, Ouyang Qing angrily told him to get lost. The disgust and pain in her eyes made Ling Yusheng's heart sink. He finally realized that his love for Ouyang Qing was a kind of humiliation, an existence that made him feel disgusted. Ling Yusheng ignored the pain and exhaustion in his body and left dejectedly. However, halfway there, he was caught by someone. His speed was originally very fast. Normal cultivators in the fasting realm could not catch up to him at all. Moreover, before that night, Ouyang Qing had always doted on him and protected him like an eyeball. The Ouyang family leader, Ouyang Xiangdong, had been cultivating in seclusion many years ago and did not go out often. Thus, Ouyang Qing, the young master, was often in charge of everything in the Ouyang family. But Ouyang Qing, who held real power, had more guards by Ling Yusheng's side than she had herself. But it was that night. Ling Yusheng's body and soul were riddled with holes. The guards of the Ouyang family saw Ouyang Qing and Ling Yusheng arguing and hesitated to chase after him to protect him. It was such a freak combination of factors that caused Ling Yusheng to fall into someone else's hands. That person was Wei Yongjin. Wei Yongjin's cultivation had only reached the 7th level of fasting, and he could not advance further. But he had Wei Tsaiju, his aunt who had married into the Ouyang family as the mistress. He also had Wei Tianming, his father who had power in the Starry School, supporting him. Thus, he had always lived lawlessly. He was not lustful, did not like treasures, but he had an extremely disgusting hobby. Torturing people. Insanely torturing people. The more painful and miserable the cries of the people in his hands were, the happier Wei Yongjin laughed. In those years, Countless people had been tortured by Wei Yongjin to the point where they died with hatred. And it was precisely because Ouyang Mingzhu knew that Wei Yongjin was such a pervert that she specifically asked Wei Yongjin to wait outside the Ouyang house. After so many years, Ling Yusheng was still unwilling to recall the days when he fell into Wei Yongjin's hands. He was stripped naked, hung up, and lashed with a whip dipped in salt water. He was pierced by a needle from the slender, beautiful fingertips. Not a single drop of blood flowed out, but he was in so much pain that he wished he could die immediately. Every time, Wei Yongjin's disgusting and sticky voice would giggle in his ear, "Look, your body is still so perfect. I didn't even cripple your tendons, bones, or dantian. Ha ha ha. Only such a perfect body will be more pleasing to the eye when it's in pain." Ling Yusheng's memories of that period were already blurred. He had forgotten how long he had been tortured and what kind of torture he had endured. Chapter 1803. He only knew that when the door to the cell opened and sunlight shone on Ouyang Xiangdong's tall body, he thought he had been saved. In fact, before that incident, he rarely saw Ouyang Xiangdong. But Ling Yusheng grew up in the Ouyang family and his father was Ouyang Xiangdong's butler, so Ouyang Xiangdong had always been very kind to him. Ouyang Xiangdong rescued him from that hell-like cage and treated him kindly. He told him to recuperate and said that he would definitely seek justice for him. Ling Yusheng didn't see Ouyang Qing at that time. He wanted to ask, but he didn't dare. He was afraid that Ouyang Qing deliberately avoided him because she hated him. That night, Ling Yusheng convulsed in pain in his room, tears streaming down his face. Wei Yongjin didn't break his meridians or destroy his dantian. But he used poisoned needles to stab into every inch of his meridians and dantian. The poison wasn't fatal, but it would magnify the pain countless times. Ling Yusheng fainted again and again, only to be woken up again and again by cold water. Even though he was out of hell, the pain still remained in his body and his soul. In a daze from the pain, Ling Yusheng opened his eyes and saw his mother crying at the head of the bed. There were also his father and brother standing next to her. Seeing his family, Ling Yusheng cried tears of joy. However, what greeted him was his father's angry scolding. How disgusting and intolerable was it for a man to like another man? He was the son of the Ling family, a dignified man. How could he do such a dirty thing that disgraced the Ling family? If he had any self-awareness, he should immediately get out of the Ouyang family and the Ling family, lest the two families lose their last bit of face. Although his mother and brother didn't say anything, they turned their heads indifferently and didn't look him in the eye. Ling Yusheng felt like he was struck by lightning. The last bit of hope and warmth in his heart disappeared at that moment. He stumbled out of the Ouyang family, but saw Ouyang Mingzhu standing at the door sneering at him. She mocked him for being a toad lusting after a swan's flesh. He was just a lowly servant's son, yet he dared to covet her brother. Unfortunately, Ouyang Qing hated him to the extreme. In order to avoid him, she didn't even want to return to the Ouyang clan. Ling Yusheng did not know how he left the Ouyang family and how he fainted outside. When he woke up, he had already been arranged to stay in a secluded courtyard. The one who saved him was still the Ouyang clan's patriarch, Ouyang Qing's father, Ouyang Xiangdong. Ouyang Xiangdong replied, "I know what happened between you and Qing. No matter what, I will make him give you an explanation. Little Sheng, you should stay here and recuperate from your injuries first." At this moment, Ouyang Xiangdong was Ling Yusheng's last life-saving straw. He was grateful to Ouyang Xiangdong for saving him from hell, and even more grateful that Ouyang Xiangdong did not hate his feelings for Ouyang Qing. However, Ling Yusheng soon realized that something was wrong. One night, after taking the medicine, he fell into a deep sleep. In the latter half of the night, he was awakened by the torment of the remaining words. Then, he inadvertently overheard Ouyang Xiangdong's conversation. That's right, it was a conversation. When will I be able to use Ling Yusheng's talent for my own? It's another day of hard work writing. Is it worth everyone throwing a monthly ticket to encourage me? Ha ha ha, I've made myself so awesome. Hands on your waist for a while. Thank you for your gifts. Momo, heart torture, memory, no nickname 13708, Chen Yushong Shui, a peaceful life, Cuckoo, time will be missed, Chijiu AO, 2 bosses with 10,000 coins, 4990645563, Yusheng GR. End of chapter. Chapter 1804. What's the hurry? His body is still too weak. If we forcefully dig out his talent, if his body can't bear it and explode along with his innate spiritual root, wouldn't the loss outweigh the gain? But this bastard, as a man, actually has such dirty thoughts towards my son. I really can't wait a moment longer. I can't wait to tear his body into pieces. Ha ha ha, didn't you already know? He's not the only one with dirty thoughts. And you're. Before the conversation ended, Ouyang Xiangdong's face suddenly changed, looking in the direction of Ling Yusheng. Who's there? Ling Yusheng didn't think, and ran wildly. One fled, one chased, and finally came to the famous Heaven's End cliff of cloud-piercing city. Under the Heaven's End cliff was the Ghostfire Swamp. The air above the Ghostfire Swamp was filled with extremely high temperature all year round. As long as a person touched it, it would be difficult to breathe, and the spiritual power in the body would feel like it was burning, painful. The swamp of the Ghostfire Swamp was extremely easy to sink into. Generally, the cultivators who jumped down from the Heaven's End cliff, even if they were at the gold core stage, would not survive more than 10 breaths. Ouyang Xiangdong patiently guided Ling Yusheng. Don't you want to see Qing'er again? Don't worry, as long as you go back with me, I promise I will make Qing'er take responsibility for you. Ling Yusheng looked at the man who was smiling kindly, but his eyes were filled with greed, and revealed a smile for the first time in a long time. His long hair was scattered, and his feet were bare. His feet and snow-white clothes were already stained with blood and dirty. But his smile was brighter and purer than the moonlight. However, there was no longer the warmth and happiness of the past, only a piece of coldness. If you're willing, please tell Ouyang Qing for me. Just say. Startled, Ling Yusheng suddenly stopped talking, revealing a self-deprecating smile. No need to tell him. I have nothing to say between him and me. From now on, I will devour. We will never meet again. Ouyang Qing, may your future be bright, but in that future, you will not be under my control. Ouyang Xiangdong's face changed, and wanted to rush forward. But Ling Yusheng had already jumped down the Heaven's End cliff. Look at how pale his face is. Wei Yongjin licked his lips. When he recalled how Ling Yusheng's body had contorted and trembled in pain, and how he had howled in pain, he was so excited that he almost drooled. Do you finally remember how I made you feel? I regretted it for a long time when you were taken away by the Ouyang family's master. The people we've found in the past 2 years aren't as interesting as you. But now it's great, I finally found you again. While speaking, Wei Yongjin waved his hand, and a dozen Pekinedia realm practitioners immediately surrounded Ling Yusheng. Before he came, he was prepared. Cousin said that this Ling Yusheng was currently at the peak of Enedia, but his strength was much stronger than an ordinary peak of Enedia. That was why he had brought over a dozen Pekinedia realm guards from the Wei clan. This way, he would be able to catch his prey again. Ling Yusheng's trembling body slowly calmed down. He raised his head, revealing a handsome face. His face was pale as snow, and his lips were unnaturally red. His eyes were deep. Where do you want to take me? Chapter 1805. When Wei Yongjin heard what he said, he took the initiative to devour. He wanted to leave with her. Instantly, his face flushed with excitement. Good, good, good. I knew you would never forget me. Ha ha ha, brother will take you back to the Wei family. In the basement of the Wei family, I have prepared a prison room 100 times better than the original one. At that time in the Ouyang family, although my aunt loved me, I couldn't do whatever I wanted. I haven't had time to use many means. This time, I will make you satisfied. Ha ha ha. Ling Yusheng raised one side of his mouth and chuckled. Well, shall we go now? Let's go now. Brother, I can't wait. Wei Yongjin didn't lose his head. He was afraid that Ling Yusheng's words were just an expedient measure, so he immediately let the guards around him surround him. Surrounded by more than a dozen tall and strong men, the thin young man looked so weak and pitiful. On the street of Tsungyun City, many people's eyes were looking at this side. They cast a pitiful look at the thin boy with his head down. Wei Yongjin became more and more complacent, and began to think about how to torture Ling Yuxing when he took him to the prison room, and how to make him cry for mercy 100 times more miserable than before. However, he did not find that the boy behind him occasionally raised his eyes. The bottom of his eyes was dark, but there was a bloody red light, like a Shura climbing up from the depths of hell. That year, after he fell off the Heaven's End cliff, before his body completely sank into the ghost fire swamp, he was rescued by his master Shiqing, who happened to pass by, and brought back to the Xiaoyaro sect. For a long period of time after that, he could not even remember who he was, and forgot why he had fallen into the ghost fire swamp where there was no chance of survival. He just began to wear women's clothes inexplicably. Subconsciously, he felt that if he was a woman, maybe all the tragedies would not have happened. Later, he slowly recovered his memory, remembered who he was, and the past and break with Ouyang Qing. However, he deliberately forgot the scene of being tortured by Wei Yongjin, being abandoned by his parents and brother, and being calculated by Ouyang Shengdong. So for so many years, he had no hatred, no idea of revenge, only endless disgust for himself. His love and hate for Ouyang Qing were intertwined. Only now, when he saw Wei Yongjin again, did he know. That hatred, that pain, that hellish torture had never disappeared. It was just that he was deceiving himself and others to hide it. The moment he saw the light of day, it would burn his soul, along with his hatred, until there was nothing left. Ouyang Qing went to the Alcade branch as usual, but she couldn't find Ling Yuxing even after looking around. The people of the Xiaoyaro sect were already used to seeing him. Luo Yu even teased him with a smile, "Senior brother Ouyang, you've come to the Alcade branch to be a husband-gazing stone again." Ouyang Qing's expression was calm, as he replied with a "en" shamelessly. On the contrary, it made Luo Yu, who was teasing him, speechless. However, on this day, Ling Yuxing still hadn't returned even after waiting until nightfall. This time, even Mu Yang and the others could not sit still. Yun Ruohan said worriedly, "Little Five has always been the most obedient of all the people. He knows that we'll be worried, but he definitely won't come back without telling us." Mu Yang said directly, "I'll go to the Danyang mountain range to look for it." Chapter 1806. In fact, Mu Yang wanted to use myriad plants resonating, and summer bugs language of ice, to let the nearby spirit plants and insects help her find Ling Yuxing's whereabouts. However, the result was still disappointing. This meant that Ling Yuxing was no longer near the Alcade institution. Ouyang Qing's face was ashen, his expression savage, his eyes filled with hatred. He suddenly soared up, the flying sword under his feet moving as fast as lightning towards the direction of Aliath branch. During this period of time, Ouyang Qing, with her Jedan cultivation level, had actually learned to fly on a sword. Mu Yang frowns. Perhaps fifth senior brother's disappearance was related to his past, the Ouyang family, and even the Wei family. She recalled the news that Ouyang Mingzhu was actually Wei Mingzhu. Mu Yan doesn't even think about it and immediately follows him. The moment Ouyang Qing entered the Aliath branch courtyard, someone immediately noticed him. "Senior brother Ouyang, it's senior brother Ouyang. Senior brother Ouyang, why are you here?" Hearing everyone's call, Wei Mingzhu rushed out excitedly. Her eyes lit up and she was about to throw herself into Ouyang Qing's arms. Big brother, you finally came to see me." Woo-woo, her body had yet to touch Ouyang Qing's clothes. However, his throat was suddenly clutched by a hand. Ouyang Qing clenched her fists. "Tell me, what did you do to Sheng?" Wei Mingzhu's throat was being strangled. She felt a burning pain on her neck, and her breathing seemed to be cut off. Her eyes almost popped out of their sockets. She opened her mouth with difficulty, and a gurgling sound came from her throat. Brother, spare me." Ouyang Qing violently flung her to the ground. Wei Mingzhu's head directly hit the corner of her master's bed. Blood immediately flowed from her head, and she let out a painful howl. Yangqing looked at her face covered in blood and crying bitterly, but there was no trace of pity in her eyes, only deep hatred and disgust. Where is Xiaosheng? What did you do to him? Wei Mingzhu covered the bleeding wound. The dizziness only subsided after a while. She wailed, "Brother, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this to me? I'm your little sister. Where's Xiaosheng? I haven't seen him at all these days. Could it be that Ling Yusheng disappeared? But what does that have to do with me? Maybe he left for fun." Before Wei Mingzhu could finish her sentence, Yangqing raised her foot and stomped on her throat. Her eyes were bloodshot as she gritted her teeth and said, "I'll ask you again, where is Xiaosheng? If you don't say it, don't blame me for being impolite." Wei Mingzhu felt the pain coming from her throat and heard a cracking sound coming from her throat. She was scared out of her wits, and her body trembled like a sieve. I don't know, I really don't know. This is Aliath Academy. You can't kill me, otherwise, you will be punished as well. What's more, I'm your only sister." Yangqing sneered, "Sister? Wei Mingzhu, do you really think that I don't have proof that you are Wei Tianming's bastard child?" Wei Mingzhu shuddered. At this time, there were more and more Aliath branch cultivators surrounding her. Hearing Yangqing's resolute and decisive words, everyone looked at Wei Mingzhu with even more contempt and disgust. Wei Mingzhu screamed, "No! I am not Wei Tianming's daughter. I'm the young lady of the Ouyang family. I am." Chapter 1807. Yangqing lifted his foot and stomped hard on her chest. With a cracking sound, Wei Mingzhu's ribs broke and she screamed like a pig being slaughtered. This scene caused the students of the Aliath school to shudder and all took a few steps back. His hands were clenched into fists. His nails dug deep into his palms, and blood dripped from the gaps between his fingers. "Back then, because you were my sister, I believed your nonsense. I thought Xiaosheng left because he was really disappointed in me. Wei Mingzhu, what did you do to Xiaosheng back then? What do you want to do to him now? He was such a failure of a man. He had hurt the person he loved, causing him to be abused and almost killed, but he didn't know anything. Only when he reunited with Ling Yusheng did he slowly realize just what kind of terrifying things had happened to Ling Yusheng back then. The people who had hurt Xiaosheng were his father, his uncle, and the sister he thought he was. And the person who had hurt Xiaosheng the most was himself. When Yangqing found out that Ling Yusheng had jumped off the Duantian cliff and narrowly escaped death, his heart ached so much that he couldn't breathe. He had stood outside the Alcade school all those nights, watching the light in Ling Yusheng's room turn on and off, tears streaming down his face. How he wanted to rush into that room, take his beloved into his arms, and confess his sins to her. But he didn't dare. Before he could avenge Xiaosheng and get justice, he did not have the right to do so. Yangqing looked down at Wei Mingzhu coldly. "I'll count to 3. If you don't tell me where Xiaosheng is, I'll kill you." Wei Mingzhu's eyes widened in fear and she shook her head with tears streaming down her face. "Brother, don't joke around. You can't kill people. This is the school, you'll be expelled. You're the young master of the Ouyang clan, how can you leave a stain on your reputation for a man, for Ling Yusheng? Ha, ha ha, brother, you won't do that, right?" Yangqing heard this and laughed softly. He had a handsome face, sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes, and he had an air of righteousness around him. But when he smiled, his eyes were dripping with blood, and he looked like a wild beast that had long since gone mad. "For Xiaosheng's sake, let alone killing you, Wei Mingzhu, I will not hesitate even if the entire Wei family disappears from this world." With that, he raised his hand, and a sword suddenly appeared in his hand. Without the slightest hesitation, he fiercely stabbed at Wei Mingzhu's chest. No. I'll talk. Ling Yusheng was in the Wei family. He's in Wei Yongjin's hands. Don't kill me. Wei Mingzhu screamed and wailed madly, her legs kicking with all her might. Not long after, a puddle of yellow liquid flowed out from between her legs, emitting a foul stench. The students of the Alioth branch vomited from the smell and could only retreat a few more steps. Ouyang withdrew the sword that had pierced through Wei Mingzhu's chest and said hoarsely, "Wei Yongjin?" Wei Mingzhu looked at the sword in her chest and panted. It's my cousin Wei Yongjin. He took Ling Yusheng away." She suddenly laughed maniacally, her loose hair shaking uncontrollably. "Brother, you still don't know. Back then, when Ling Yusheng left the Ouyang clan, he fell into Wei Yongjin's hands. Wei Yongjin's methods of torture are not something ordinary people can endure." Chapter 1808. Ha ha ha, that's why Ling Yusheng went crazy. Even though that bitch survived, he became neither a man nor a woman. Ha ha ha. This time, he's fallen into Wei Yongjin's hands once more. What do you think that bitch, Ling Yusheng, will become? Ha ha ha. Ouyang body trembled uncontrollably. He only knew that Ling Yusheng had been imprisoned back then, and that the Wei family was involved in it. However, he did not know that the one who imprisoned and injured Ling Yusheng was actually Wei Yongjin. When the Alioth branch students heard Wei Mingzhu's malicious words and curses, they were disgusted by her to the extreme. "Kill her. Kill this evil woman. That's right, senior brother Ouyang, if you don't dare to make a move, we'll do it. Damn it, at most I'll be expelled from the academy. I'll go all out." He actually dared to harm a member of the Carefree Squad. "I won't tolerate it even if I die." Wei Mingzhu's laughter sounded as if someone had squeezed her throat. His hysterical madness turned into terror once again. Ouyang's eyes were bloodshot, but his expression was extremely calm. He held the sword in his hand and walked towards Wei Mingzhu step by step. "No, brother, you can't kill me. You won't kill me, right? I may not be your sister, but I love you. Ever since I found out that I wasn't the daughter of the Ouyang family, ever since I could remember, I've only had you in my heart. Brother, in this world, there's no one who loves you more than me. How can you kill me?" However, Ouyang acted as if she did not hear her words at all, and the sword in her hand suddenly stabbed out. However, just as the sword was delivered halfway, the sound of a zither resounded in the classroom. Following that, the sound blade flew out, causing Ouyang's sword tip to deviate by an inch, stabbing into Wei Mingzhu's shoulder. Despite the excruciating pain in her shoulder, Wei Mingzhu still looked at the reinforcements at the door with wild joy. However, when she saw who it was, the joy on her face suddenly turned into fear. Holding the Tianmo Qin in her hand, Muyan walks in step by step, the corners of her mouth hooking up into an eerie smile. "Wei Mingzhu, do you want to die a quick death? You still have to ask my fifth senior brother if he agrees." Wei Mingzhu opened her mouth and wanted to say something. But the sound of Muyan's zither had already been heard. The music was imbued with spiritual qi. It condensed above Wei Mingzhu's head and suddenly turned into a cage, binding Wei Mingzhu tightly. Drawing prison, a level 5 skill. It could trap those with low cultivation in a cage made of music, making them unable to struggle or escape. After Mu Yang appeared, Ouyang did not stop for a moment and directly rushed to the Wei clan. In fact, during this period of time, he had grasped the power of the Ouyang family in his hands, completely overthrowing his father, Ouyang Xiangdong, and stepmother, Wei Caizhu, who had been in seclusion all year round. On the other hand, he used the Ouyang family's secret forces to continuously weaken the Wei family. Because of Wei Tianming's death, the Wei family began to decline. In addition to Ouyang's suppression, the current Wei clan was already on the verge of collapse. However, no matter how weakened they were, the Wei family was still a second-rate family. Wei Tiangang, the ancestor of the Wei clan, who had been in seclusion for many years, was at the peak of the Golden Core realm. When Ling Yusheng and the others were fighting the Tian family, they were also able to deal with Tian Heibo's peak Golden Core stage slaughter puppets. But there was a world of difference in strength between peak Golden Core realm and peak Golden Core realm. In the end, puppets were puppets. They had no fighting awareness, no fighting skills. Chapter 1809. Even if they were both at the peak of the Golden Core realm, A true cultivator would be at least 3 to 5 times stronger than a puppet. With Ling Yusheng's strength, it would be difficult for him to deal with Wei Tiangang. Furthermore, the Wei clan had so many death warriors. There was no lack of golden core cultivators. Ouyang Qing could not imagine what would happen to Ling Yusheng if he was brought back to the Wei clan. If he were to fall into the hands of that bastard Wei Yongjin once more. Thinking about this, Ouyang Qing's eyes turned red, and his eyes were filled with a crazed killing intent. His Xiao Sheng. If anyone dared to touch his Xiao Sheng again, he would make sure that bastard was buried with him. However, when Ouyang Qing landed in the Wei clan and saw the scene before him, his pupils constricted. The huge Wei clan was filled with the thick stench of blood and the aura of death at this moment. From the main door to the main room, everywhere was filled with corpses. Almost all of these corpses had their throats slit with a single slash. When they died, their eyes were wide open, as though they could not believe what had happened. Ouyang Qing quickly came to the square. Here, a few tens of Wei clan members were tightly surrounding a youth that was bathed in blood. The leader, Wei Tiangang, was filled with rage, gritting his teeth. Ling Yusheng, you dare to kill so many of my Wei clan members. Today, I, Wei Tiangang, will not rest until I tear you to shred. The few golden core cultivators standing beside Wei Tiangang looked at the youth with fear. Patriarch, be careful, this little rascal is too strange. He's so fast that we can't even catch his shadow. The youth slowly raised his head, revealing a snow-white, yet blood-stained face. His eyes were dark and gloomy, as if they had lost their focus. He looked frail and weak, as though he could be blown away by a gust of wind. However, the moment he moved, everyone in the square reacted as though they were facing a great enemy, and they subconsciously retreated in fear. Ling Yusheng took a deep breath, and circulated the spiritual energy in his body once more. However, at the next instant, he felt a burning sensation from his dantian. His body swayed, and he almost fell to the ground. The people of the Wei clan immediately cried out in joy, "He's exhausted. This brat's spiritual energy is finally exhausted. Ha ha ha. Everyone, let's kill him together." Wei Tiangang abruptly unleashed his pressure and spiritual energy. He was the first to soar into the sky and ruthlessly smashed towards the top of Ling Yusheng's head. Ling Yusheng calmly closed his eyes, standing there quietly, waiting for death to come. Without the help of his junior sister and his senior brothers, he was still too weak. However, in the next moment, his body was suddenly pulled into a warm embrace. Bang! Wei Tiangang's palm hit Ouyang Qing's back. In the nick of time, he rushed over to protect Ling Yusheng and didn't even have the time to circulate his spiritual energy. Now that he was struck by the full power of a peak golden core cultivator, he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. With trembling hands, Ling Yusheng touched the warm liquid that splashed on his face. In a daze, she raised her head to look at the handsome face that was right in front of her. Her unfocused eyes slowly lit up and reflected Ouyang Qing's figure. "Little Sheng, don't be afraid." Ouyang Qing reached out and caressed his blood-stained face. The corners of her mouth pulled into an incomparably gentle smile. "I'm sorry, I'm late again." Chapter 18:10. However, Xiao Sheng, don't be afraid. This time, I will not let anyone hurt you. After that, he suddenly turned around, and the sword in his hand danced in an airtight manner, firmly blocking Ling Yusheng behind him. Even if it was an attack from behind, he would use his own back to block it. In just a few moments, the blood on Ouyang Qing's body was no less than Ling Yusheng's. Wei Tiangang's attack had failed, and he retreated to his original position, discovering that the one who blocked his attack was actually Ouyang Qing. He was immediately enraged. "Qing'er, what are you doing? How can you help outsiders deal with your maternal grandfather's family?" Ouyang Qing wiped the blood off his face, laughing coldly. "Maternal family? Then may I ask, which one of you is my grandfather?" His sharp gaze swept across everyone present. "That year when my grandfather died in an accident, my mother was grieving over my father's death and fell ill. Not only did you not comfort my mother, you even tried to take care of my grandfather's descendants. Instead, You used the excuse of taking care of my mother to send Wei Saiju to the Ouyang family. In the end, she climbed into my father's bed. Devouring was filled with grief, and he was betrayed by his kin. He died on the spot. What about you guys? Using the name of my maternal family, you lied to the ignorant me, making me think that Wei Saiju entered the Ouyang clan to take care of me. Wei Saiju had wanted to give birth to a son, and let him inherit the Ouyang clan. Who knew that she only gave birth to a daughter, and was unable to conceive another child. In the end, Wei Saiju had no choice but to change her mind. She wanted to use her and Wei Tianming's daughter to steal Ouyang Qing's heart, and make Wei Mingzhu the mistress of the Ouyang clan. Hence, ever since Ouyang Qing could remember, Wei Saiju had always been gentle and caring towards him. At one point, he had treated her as his kin, and treated her as his own sister. However, who would have thought that these two would be so crazy, and the Wei clan was even more vicious than most people could imagine. The more Ouyang Qing investigated, the more shocked he became. He finally understood how foolish he had been in the past. Because of his foolishness, what kind of harm had he brought to Xiao Sheng? Hearing Ouyang Qing's words, Wei Tiangang and the rest had awkward expressions. However, very quickly, Wei Tiangang rebuked, "Even if we did something wrong, we're still your kin. Who does this little hussy think she is? He killed so many people from my Wei family. Are you still going to stand on his side?" Suddenly, his face was filled with disgust. "Don't tell me that Mingzhu said that you like men, and were seduced by this little slut, is it true?" The sword in Ouyang Qing's hand slashed out fiercely. "Wei Tiangang, you can insult me, but you can't insult little Sheng." Wei Tiangang was so angry that his whole body was trembling. You actually dare to treat me like this? I'm your granduncle. If you dare to make a move against me, you will be committing treason and will be struck by lightning." Ouyang Qing looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. The long sword in his hand, along with him, flew out. The man's hoarse but resolute voice reverberated between heaven and earth. "For Xiao Sheng, even if I have to become enemies with the entire world, even if I have to be struck by lightning and be consigned to eternal damnation, I will not hesitate." Ling Yusheng looked at the man who rushed out, his already cold and numb heart lightly beating. However, Ouyang Qing's strength was only on par with Ling Yusheng. Ling Yusheng couldn't fight against everyone in the Wei clan by himself, and Ouyang Qing naturally couldn't do it either. Chapter 1811. Especially the ancestor of the Wei clan, Wei Tiangang. He had only come out when Ling Yusheng was almost exhausted from the battle. He was powerful and had a profound cultivation. Even at his peak, the two of them might not be his match. Moreover, Ling Yusheng's spiritual power was already exhausted, and Ouyang Qing was seriously injured. If Wei Tiangang didn't dare to kill Ouyang Qing because she was the young master of the Ouyang clan, Ouyang Qing would have already fallen. At this moment, the melodious sound of a zither came from the sky. Ling Yusheng felt that his dried-up dantian was filled with an endless stream of gentle spiritual power. His eyes lit up and he looked up at the sky. He saw a black-haired girl in green holding a black zither and stepping on a crystal-clear long sword. She slowly landed on the ground. Echo Aura, activated. It was Mu Yang's zither that allowed Ling Yusheng's spiritual power to flow into his limbs and bones. Not long after, the flying boat whizzed over from behind Mu Yang. The people of the Xiao Yarrow sect jumped off the flying boat. "Xiao Wu, are you okay?" When the people of the Xiao Yarrow sect saw Ling Yusheng covered in blood, their expressions changed. Their murderous intent swept through the entire training field of the Wei clan like a bone-chilling wind. Lung Yumor didn't think and immediately released her ardent sun domain. The blazing aura caused the spiritual power in the air of the Wei clan to boil. "How dare you bully our Xiao Wu, go to hell." The long blade suddenly soared into the sky and fiercely slashed at the people of the Wei clan who were attacking Ouyang Qing. The blade was wrapped in spiritual power, and like a fire dragon, it crashed into the crowd with a bang. A few of the Wei clan guards, who were fighting excitedly, immediately let out miserable cries as they were thrown to the ground by the saber force. There was clearly no fire, but their clothes showed signs of being burnt. Even now, their skin and flesh were still making sizzling sounds along with their moans. The people of the Wei clan stopped attacking Ouyang Qing. Wei Tiangang saw that among the people injured by the blade energy, there was a junior of the Wei clan that he thought highly of. He immediately became furious and fiercely glared at Mu Yang and the others. "Who are you? How dare you come to my Wei clan and behave atrociously?" As he spoke, the two black hammers in his hands turned into a ray of light and flew towards Lung Yumor and Luo Yu. These two hammers were called black gold hammers. Although they were only the size of 2 palms, they were extremely powerful. In fact, each sword was as heavy as a small mountain. It was a genuine 7th stage spirit weapon. If an ordinary person were to be lightly touched by this black gold hammer, all the bones in their body would break. Furthermore, the power of the black gold hammer was not limited to just this. When Wei Tiangang took out the black gold hammer, he poured his gold spiritual energy into it. The two hammers had just flown into the air when they were already crackling with lightning. Every time a bolt of lightning landed on the ground, it would raise a cloud of dust and create a small pit. With such a strike, not to mention a few Enidia stage kids, even a Jindan stage expert would definitely be smashed by this black gold hammer until he vomited blood and was roasted by the lightning. However, before the black gold hammers could get close to Lung Yumor and Luo Yu, the melodious sound of the zither rang out. Then, a wall of sound appeared in front of the 7 people of the Xiao Yarrow sect. The black gold hammers heavily smashed on the wall of sound, making crackling sounds of lightning. It kept spinning, but it was unable to move an inch forward. Wei Tiangang's face changed and he blurted out, "This is impossible. How could there be someone who could block his black gold hammers?" Wei Tiangang gritted his teeth, and the spiritual energy in his body revolved wildly, pouring into the black gold hammers through the air. Chapter 1812. The two black hammers spun even faster on the sound wall, emitting a zzz sound. Muyan's expression is leisurely as she says slowly, "Second senior brother." The devourer calls him, and he immediately steps forward obediently, extending both hands. One in each hand, he grabs the two hammers that are crazily spinning and vibrating on the sound wall. The weight of the hammers is so great, their spinning speed is so fast, and they're also attached with lightning. If an ordinary person were to touch them, their fingers and bones would have long been smashed and scorched. But Qin Ju grabs the two hammers easily, as if he's grabbing a chick. Wei Tiangang's face is even more aghast, his voice suddenly rising, "Impossible. Absolutely impossible." Ah! The next moment, he feels that the divine sense he branded on the hammers is forcibly erased by a fierce energy. Wei Tiangang immediately spits out a mouthful of blood, his eyes filled with fury. "RRR, thief, you dare to take away my hammers." Muyan is all smiles as she pats the silly Qin Ju. "Well done, put away these hammers. Later, just use them as a plaything." Qin Ju nods, grabs his hair, and giggles mischievously. Although he prefers to fight with his fists. But the little junior sister told him to put them away, so of course he has to. Wei Tiangang watches helplessly as his 7th grade spiritual tool is snatched away, he's simply going mad with anger. But before he could flare up, someone from the Wei family suddenly cries out, "Jun Muyan." She's the female devil Jun Muyan. Soon after, this person's gaze turns to Yun Ruohan, Qin Ju, Chu Moli, Leng Yumor, Luo Yu, and Ling Yusheng with alarm and disbelief. His pupils suddenly contract, the shock on his face makes him almost unable to speak clearly. "The unfettered 7 devils, they're the unfettered 7 devils." Ling Yusheng, how could I forget? One of the unfettered 7 devils is also called Ling Yusheng. As soon as this statement comes out, the Wei family's side is completely silent, completely scared silly. Unfettered. Unfettered 7 devils? Which unfettered 7 devils? Could it be that the unfettered 7 devils, the 4th great world of the azure blue world, the Tian family, which had a nascent soul stage cultivator? Heavens, what kind of person did their Wei family provoke? Thump. Some of the guards of the Wei clan could not take it anymore, kneeling on the ground, their faces pale. I'm not from the Wei clan. I'm just a servant hired by the Wei clan. I'm willing to surrender. I surrender too, please spare our lives. Many of the Wei clan's guards changed sides and knelt on the ground to beg for mercy. It was not that they were weak or cowardly, nor did they have a contract spirit. It was just that the reputation of the 7 unfettered devils was too terrifying. Especially Jun Muyin, that demoness. Anyone who had heard of her legendary deeds would know. From the Minute Lu domain to the Azure Cloud domain to the Azure Blue domain, as long as they offended her, they would all die a miserable death. You don't believe me? Let's take a look at the Tian family. Not to mention the complete annihilation of a large clan, the Tian clan's lackeys were stripped of their clothes and made to pose in a shameful pose, with a large number of nude paintings painted on them. Presently, these paintings had long since spread throughout the streets and alleys of the Minute LV, Azure Cloud, and Azure Blue domains. These people would probably never be able to raise their heads again in this lifetime. Sob sob sob, they would rather die than follow in the footsteps of the Tian family. Even Wei Tiangang is dumbfounded. He shakily raises his head and meets Ling Yusheng's cold eyes, then turns to look at the murderous Muyin and the rest. He shudders all over. Chapter 1813. The Unfettered 7 Devils. Are they really the unfettered 7 devils? No, no, no. How is this possible? It's not like he doesn't know Ling Yusheng. Isn't that the son of Ouyang Manor's housekeeper? He's seen him a few times in the past when he visited the Ouyang family. Although he has delicate features and outstanding talent, it's not a big deal. Back then, Ling Yusheng had Ouyang Qing's protection, but he was still tortured by the Wei family. How did he become the unfettered 7 devils that the entire Azure Blue world trembles in fear? Wei Tiangang grits his teeth. Ling Yusheng, don't think that this old man will be afraid of you just because you found a few people to pretend to be the unfettered 7 devils. Even if you've grown stronger and know how to put on an act, you can't change the fact that you're just a lowly bastard. Moreover, a shameless bastard who likes men. Ha ha ha. Ouyang Qing's eyes are spitting fire, about to make a move against Wei Tiangang. However, Ling Yusheng slowly took a step forward and stopped his movements. I will avenge myself. Ouyang Qing's eyes are full of heartache, but he still retreats. Yun Ruohan and the rest also take a few steps back, standing behind Mu Yang. Mu Yang leisurely and languidly sits on the ground, his slender white fingers lightly plucking the zither strings. 5th senior brother, I'll be your assistant. The rest of the Wei family are all yours. Ling Yusheng smiles gratefully at Mu Yang. He took out a silver hair tie from his Chenkuan pouch, and tied his long hair. His face was stained with blood, but it appeared even more delicate and beautiful. The warm sunlight and gentle breeze fall on his face, he can't help but narrow his eyes, taking a deep breath. When he opens his eyes again, the haze and deathly stillness in his eyes have completely dissipated. Yes, he wasn't all alone and filled with despair any longer. He has senior brothers and sisters by his side who care for him, master and junior uncle who teach him. Those are his nightmares, but he's awakened from them now. The road ahead is lit with sparks, bringing warmth and hope. Ling Yusheng's face slowly blooms with a bright smile. Wei Tiangang, Wei Yongjin, Wei Mingzhu, today, I'll take back everything your Wei family owes me. The muscles on Wei Tiangang's face twitched. He wanted to scold him for overestimating himself. How could a cultivator at the Anidia stage be compared to him, a cultivator at the peak of Jindan stage? However, at this moment, a terrifying energy that made him shudder suddenly spread out from Ling Yusheng and engulfed everyone present. Silence, emptiness, like the murmur of flowing water, and the silence of the night. But in reality, it was neither. It was the one and only space-time corridor in the world. Muyin's eyes suddenly widen, and she almost plucks a wrong string on the zither. The other members of the Xiao Yarrow sect were also shocked. Ouyang Qing was pleasantly surprised as she looked at the youth not far away. There was pride and excitement on her face as her eyes slowly turned red. After a long while, Yun Ruohan muttered hoarsely, Little Five activated his domain. Yes. At this moment, Ling Yusheng, whose mind was clear and bright, finally activated his own domain. Moreover, It was the space domain that very few people in the world could activate. His domain was the same as Luo Yunxiao, belonging to the 9 luminaries Great Yin. Wei Tiangong's eyes slightly protruded. His pupils were bloodshot, visible to the naked eye. Extreme fear made the veins on his hand that was holding the weapon bulge. Chapter 1814. An hour later, Wei Tiangang lay on the ground like a dead dog, coughing up blood non-stop, unable to get up. As for the rest of the Wei clan, they had already been devoured. Those who had already fainted, those who had surrendered. Amidst the corpses, the one who stood stably was that delicate and frail youth. "We won." Luo Yu laughed as she ran over and hugged the youth, shouting excitedly, "Fifth senior brother, you're amazing. You were so fast, I couldn't even see your movements." Ling Yusheng's body swayed, his face pale, but he smiled warmly. "I didn't think that I could activate my domain under such circumstances." His domain was related to space, so when it was used in battle, it was the limit of speed, even teleportation. Just now, when he fought with Wei Tiangang, he used a speed that the naked eye couldn't follow to exhaust him to death. It was just that this kind of battle technique consumed too much spiritual energy and yuan qi. Even with the help of junior sisters zither, he felt drained, and couldn't muster any strength. But no matter what, being able to activate his domain was a pleasant surprise. Ling Yusheng said, "This time, I finally have the face to see Teacher Mo and Junior Uncle." Hearing his words, Luo Yu's face fell. That's right, the only ones who haven't activated their domains are second senior brother, third senior brother, and him. Back then, Teacher Mo and Junior Uncle only gave them 3 more months, and now the 3 months are almost up. If they still can't activate their domains, Teacher Mo and Junior Uncle will be completely disappointed in them, and won't care about them anymore. In fact, Luo Yu felt strange. The rest of the Xiao Yarrow sect, including second senior brother, felt that they had touched the door of the domain. But only he could feel that he was getting closer and closer to the door. But recently, this feeling had disappeared. On the contrary, the soul pearl on his back was constantly burning. There were a few times when he was dreaming, he could even hear Bai Ziyi whispering something in his ear. But what exactly it said, he couldn't remember it when he woke up. Ling Yusheng was about to comfort Luo Yu, when his expression suddenly changed, and he disappeared. When he reappeared, he was holding a bloody person in his hand. It was Wei Yongjin. Even though Ling Yusheng had thought things through, his eyes were still filled with deep hatred when he saw Wei Yongjin. Just now, he had only crippled Wei Yongjin and not killed him. Instead, he had focused on dealing with the Wei family. That was because he would not allow that bastard to die so easily. The bones in Wei Yongjin's legs were completely shattered, the piercing pain causing his entire body to tremble. When he saw Ling Yusheng, his face revealed deep fear, and he screamed as he tried to crawl away. Ling Yusheng sneered, and the demon-absorbing needle in his hand flew out. Ah! Dozens of needles pierced into Wei Yongjin's body, not into his flesh, but directly into his bones. How could an ordinary person endure that kind of pain? Wei Yongjin immediately let out a blood-curdling scream like a pig being slaughtered, and his whole body kept bouncing on the ground. Ling Yusheng retracted his hand and activated the demonic binding silk. The needle in Wei Yongjin's body flew out. This was another round of torture for Wei Yongjin. When all 36 demon-absorbing needles were pulled out, Wei Yongjin could barely speak. Chapter 1815. Spare my life. Boo-hoo, spare my life. Ling Yusheng slowly walks up to Wei Yongjin, looking down at him from above. "That year, when I begged you to let me go, what was your answer?" At that time, Wei Yongjin was holding torture tools in his hands, his face showing a psychopathic smile. "Ha ha ha, only when you're being tortured will you let out such a beautiful cry. I can't stop myself from yelling." In order for this young master to enjoy it, Ling Yusheng, cry out in pain. The louder you cry, the more pain you show, the more excited and comfortable this young master will be. Ha 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 ha. The needles in Ling Yusheng's hands fly out again. This time, it's not 36, but 81. 9 of them uniformly plunge into Wei Yongjin's spine. The sound of his spine being pierced rang in Wei Yongjin's ears one after another. Ling Yusheng looks at him coldly, his voice icy. Didn't you say that you like to listen to other people's cries of pain? Then listen to it properly. Wei Yongjin's mouth is wide open, drool continuously flowing from his mouth, mixing with his tears. The crotch of his trousers has long been muddy. He can't even scream anymore. He can only struggle and crawl towards Wei Tiangang, his mouth shouting, "Save me, save me." Mu Yang throws Ouyang Mingzhu in front of Ling Yusheng from her Qiankuan bag. "Fifth brother, these people owe you. Today you'll get them all back." The sound prison loosens, and Wei Mingzhu awkwardly crawls out. Her eyes turn, and she first sees the Wei family's plaque. Her face brightens, and she's about to cry for help. But before her voice can come out, she sees the Wei family members lying in disorder on the square, Wei Tiangang, who's on the verge of death, and Wei Yongjin, who's covered in blood and wailing incessantly. The hope in Wei Mingzhu's eyes slowly turns into panic. Then, her gaze falls on Ouyang Qing, and she frantically rushes over. "Big brother, save me." She hugs Ouyang Qing's thigh, tears streaming down her face. "Brother, I'm the little sister you watched grow up. When I was young, you hugged me and fed me milk. You won't just stand and watch as I'm killed, right?" Ling Yusheng's body suddenly stiffened when he saw this. The absorbing needles in his hands were slowly lowered. Ouyang Qing's heart ached when she saw Ling Yusheng's actions. But he did not say anything. Instead, he lowered his head to look at Wei Mingzhu, who was hugging him. "Have you forgotten? You have already admitted to me that you are Wei Mingzhu, the bastard child of Wei Caizhu and Wei Tianming. Look, even your name contains the affection between the two of them." Wei Mingzhu shuddered, then cried even harder. "Yes, I'm not your biological sister, but I love you. Brother, everything I do is only because I love you. If it wasn't for that slut Ling Yusheng seducing you, I would have already obtained your heart. I was jealous of him and hated him. That's why I attacked him. Brother, how can you bear to kill me, who loves you so much?" Seeing this, Ling Yusheng slowly lowered his eyes and revealed a mocking smile. In Ouyang Qing's heart, Ouyang Mingzhu, the younger sister who grew up with him, was more important. Perhaps, the person Ouyang Qing truly loved was Ouyang Mingzhu. Otherwise, why would he have chased her away that year? Chapter 1816. Why would he leave the Ouyang clan and turn a blind eye to her life and death, allowing Wei Yongjin and Ouyang Mingzhu to persecute her to such an extent? The devouring slowly turned into a sharp killing intent. He raised the demon-absorbing needle in his hand again. So what if Ouyang Qing wanted to protect Ouyang Mingzhu? He had never forgotten what Ouyang Mingzhu had done to him back then. He would definitely get her back. Ouyang Qing's heart ached even more when she saw Ling Yusheng's actions. He hurriedly tried to explain, "Little Sheng, Before he could finish his words, his face suddenly changed, and he pounced towards Ling Yusheng without thinking. Ling Yusheng never expected that Ouyang Qing would directly attack him when he wanted to kill Ouyang Mingzhu. For a moment, the hatred, pain, and despair in his heart surged again. However, before the hatred in his heart could completely ferment, Ouyang Qing had already hugged him tightly and turned around. Boom! A loud noise came from behind the two of them. Ling Yusheng felt that his internal organs were shaking. Then, a stream of warm liquid sprayed into his neck. The pungent smell of blood slowly flowed on his skin. Ling Yusheng was stunned, his body stiffening inch by inch. His pupils shrunk to the size of a needle tip, and the blood in his body turned cold bit by bit. He opened his mouth, and after a long while, he managed to speak in a hoarse voice. Ouyang Qing's arms, which were hugging him, slowly fell down. The tall body seemed to have finally exhausted all its strength, and slowly fell down. Behind him was Wei Tiangang, who was covered in blood and had a large hole in his dantian. He fell straight to the ground and swallowed his last breath. Until the moment of his death, he still had a sinister smile on his face. Wei Tiangang saw that the Wei clan was going to be annihilated and knew that he would not be able to escape his fate. He was also indignant that the Wei clan had been destroyed by the hands of Ling Yusheng, the son of a servant, so he actually chose to self-destruct. Mu Yang and the others all thought that the Wei family's people had long been beaten by Ling Yusheng to the point where they did not have the strength to retaliate. Therefore, everyone's attention was focused on Wei Yongjin and Wei Mingzhu. It was to the extent that no one noticed Wei Tiangang's unusual movements. Only Ouyang Qing remained. His attention, his gaze, his entire heart, had never left Ling Yusheng for even a moment. Therefore, when Wei Tiangang blew himself up, without thinking, he pounced over and blocked the attack for Ling Yusheng. Ling Yusheng suddenly crouched down and caught Ouyang Qing's falling body. He wanted to help her up, but found that his hands were shaking badly. Little junior sister, Ling Yusheng screamed. Even he himself did not realize how much fear there was in his voice. Mu Yang quickly stepped forward and took Ouyang Qing's pulse, but his heart sank. Ouyang Qing's injuries were obviously very serious, and she was already on the verge of death. She doesn't say much and quickly plucks the strings of the Tian Mo Qin. The Saint of Benevolence was displayed without hesitation. In the space, Qi Huang said with a sullen face, "Jun Muyan, you idiot, you're wasting your lifespan for someone else again." Mu Yang, in the future, my cultivation will inevitably reach the peak of a cultivator, and my lifespan will naturally be more than thousands of years. What's there to be afraid of if I consume a little bit of it? Qi Huang said angrily, "You're really shameless when you praise yourself. Who said that your lifespan will definitely be more than 10,000 years? Chapter 1817. Muyan sneers, "My fiancé has already lived for 1,000 years, and my son has a natural immortal body. If there are no accidents, he can live for at least a few thousand years. My tool spirit has already existed for tens of thousands of years. If I can't live a little longer, wouldn't I be living in vain?" Qi Huang. Damn it, what she said makes sense, he can't refute it at all. However, the benevolence of the saint can bring Ouyang Qing back from the edge of life and death, but it can't really heal his injuries. Blood keeps gushing out of Ouyang Qing's mouth. Ling Yusheng shakes his hand, wanting to feed the pill into his mouth. But Ouyang Qing grabs his wrist. The blood-stained hand has clearly lost its strength, but it's tightly clenched, like it's going all out to hold on to something important. A broken voice overflows from Ouyang Qing's mouth, "Xiao Sheng, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you back then. Why couldn't I protect the one I love the most in this life?" Tears mixed with blood trickle down his face, carrying so much regret, despair, and pain. Ling Yusheng puts the pill into his mouth, his voice trembling. "Don't talk anymore. Ouyang Qing, you can't repay what you owe me in this lifetime, so you'd better live well." Devour jumps, his originally dim eyes brighten a bit. He opens his mouth, "Xiao Sheng, I still have a chance to stay by your side." Ouyang Qing's words haven't finished. The sluggish Wei Mingzhu comes back to her senses. She really loves Ouyang Qing. Seeing that Ouyang Qing was seriously injured and on the verge of death, she scrambled over to him. Brother, how are you? Don't scare me, okay?" Suddenly, she fiercely glares at Ling Yusheng, shrieking hysterically, "Ling Yusheng, it's all because of you, you slut, Jinx. You're the one who killed my brother." He was originally the young master of the Ouyang family, young and promising, with outstanding talent. He would have become the most outstanding cultivator in Cloud-Piercing City and even the Blue World. But because you, slut, seduced him, you made him bear the infamy of liking men, making him unable to stay in Cloud-Piercing City. And now you killed him. Ling Yusheng, you shameless slut, why didn't you die? Wei Mingzhu's voice stopped abruptly. She opened her mouth wide and made a cracking sound. Her head stiffened and drooped down woodenly as she looked at her chest. There, a long sword pierced through. Blood dripped from the tip of the sword. Why? Wei Mingzhu slowly turned around and looked at Ouyang Qing, who was holding the sword. Brother, why are you doing this to me? Ouyang Qing's eyes were already unfocused, and his breathing was so weak that it was almost inaudible. But his hand that was holding the sword was extremely steady, and it steadily pierced through Wei Mingzhu's chest. A low and hoarse voice slowly spat out from his slightly parted lips. Back then. I told you. Anyone who hurts little Sheng, I will never let them go. I will never forgive them. Ouyang Qing pulled out the sword stuck in his chest. Once again, he spurted out a mouthful of blood. Ouyang Qing. Ling Yusheng hugged him and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He couldn't help but roar, Ouyang Qing, don't die. Chapter 1818. You said that you owe me, and you will compensate me for the rest of your life. You can't break your promise again and again. Ouyang Qing's face slowly blooms with a warm smile. Xiao Sheng, I have been waiting for many years to tell you, but I'm afraid, if I don't say it, I won't have the chance. Xiao Sheng, I love you. A long time ago, before Ling Yusheng fell in love with Ouyang Qing, Ouyang Qing has been deeply in love with Ling Yusheng. I just don't dare to admit. Who would have thought that his momentary confusion and struggle would cause Ling Yusheng to suffer so much? Who would have thought that just a momentary miss would almost separate them forever, life and death? If there is a next life, will you still be with me? Whether it's a man or a woman, whether it's a man or a beast, as long as Ouyang Qing and Ling Yusheng are together, it's fine. It has nothing to do with human relations, nothing to do with morality, it's just pure love. Ling Yusheng can't hold back his tears anymore. He grabs Ouyang Qing's hand and sobs, Ouyang Qing, I won't let you die. Don't die, don't leave me, okay? There is no next life, there is no next life, I only want Ouyang Qing to live. Brother Qing, I promise you, as long as you live, I will forgive you, and from now on, we will never be separated. Ouyang Qing's pale face is covered with blood, but he shows a bright and satisfied smile, then slowly closes his eyes. Brother Qing. Ling Yusheng lets out a mournful and desperate cry. The people of the Xiaoyaro school also sadly look away, unwilling to see this scene of life and death. At this time, the zither music slowly stops. Mu Yang weakly says, don't worry, he won't die, he just entered the star fantasy to receive treatment. Ling Yusheng suddenly raises his head, his red eyes look at Mu Yang, his voice trembling with hope. Junior sister, you mean Brother Qing is still alive? Mu Yang raises her eyebrows. Although her face is pale and weak, her eyes are filled with disdain. Since I made a move, how can I let him die? Don't worry, when he wakes up from the astral illusion, he'll be fine after devouring it. It's just that his body is extremely weak now, and he needs a long time to recuperate. Ling Yusheng quickly stretched out his hand to check Ouyang Qing's pulse. Although it was weak, both her breathing and spiritual energy were stable. It was obvious that he was still alive, but he had fallen into a deep sleep. Overjoyed, he raises his head and looks at Mu Yan. He wants to say thank you, but he can't utter a word for a long time. Mu Yang smiled and said, you want to thank me? There was no need for that. I just feel that if I let Ouyang Qing die like this, wouldn't my fifth martial sister-in-law be gone? It won't be easy to find another handsome guy who can stand next to my fifth senior brother. The members of the Xiao Yarrow sect burst into laughter. Fifth sister-in-law? Fifth sister-in-law? Looking at Ouyang Qing's handsome, masculine face, the Xiao Yarrow sect disciples and Yun Ruohan couldn't help but laugh as they nodded in agreement. Of course, Ouyang Qing would marry into the Xiao Yarrow school. However, since Ouyang Qing was now a family member of the Xiao Yarrow school, they should treat him better in the future. Chapter 1819. Everyone looks at Wei Yongjin and Wei Mingzhu. One of them is scared to the point of insanity, and the other has been stimulated by Ouyang Qing. Their mouths keep spouting nonsense. Ling Yusheng looks at the two, and suddenly loses interest in revenge. He's about to finish them off with a single sword strike. Unexpectedly, Chu Moli suddenly opens his mouth, I'm short of 2 experimental subjects, why don't you give them to me? Muyan looks at him suspiciously. Third brother, you've taken away at least 8 if not 10 experimental subjects, right? What are you doing? The conflict with the Tian family last time was also because of those Xiuzhe that had been especially rude, and had done too many heinous things. Muyan and the others originally wanted to execute justice, but they were also taken away by Chu Moli. However, no one in the entire Xiaoyaro school knows what kind of abnormal experiment this abnormal third brother is doing. Chu Moli shows a gentle smile, and unhurriedly says, it's a secret. Moreover, he pauses, meets Muyan's eyes, and his expression becomes more and more gentle and shy. Moreover, I can guarantee that, little sister, you won't want to know what I'm doing. The youth in front of her clearly has a delicate appearance, and his smile is gentle and harmless, but Muyan shivers for no reason. She always feels that her third brother seems to be more and more abnormal. After returning to Yaoguang branch, Muyan immediately hides in her room. In fact, the holy benevolence technique consumes a lot of her strength. She can feel that the vitality in her body seems to have been drained. But she doesn't dare to show it in front of the people of the Xiaoyaro school, for fear that they will make a fuss over nothing. She's even more afraid that fifth brother will feel guilty. At this time, Muyan can only rejoice. Fortunately, Di Mingju is dealing with the matters of the Shoshan continent, and isn't in Yaoguang branch. Otherwise, if this man knew that she hurt herself to save others, he would never let it go. Just as this thought flashes through her mind, Muyan feels that something is wrong, and suddenly opens her eyes. A pair of icy blue eyes were right in front of her, staring at her without blinking. The moment she sees these eyes, Muyan's whole heart jumps up, thinking that Di Mingju has returned. When she comes back to her senses, she finds that the one staring at her is Xiao Bao. A thought flashes through her mind. Xiao Bao's eyes seem to be more and more similar to Di Mingju's. Of course, there were people with blue eyes in the 3 realms. But just now, for a split second, she really thought that the one looking at her was Di Mingju. Could this be what Bai Xie said, that people who spend a lot of time together will have the look of husband and wife, the look of father and son? Thinking that one day, she will become more and more like Di Mingju, Mu Yang couldn't help but burst into laughter. Unexpectedly, when Xiaobao, who was already unhappy, saw her smile, his tender cheeks puffed up even higher. "I'm not happy" was written all over his face. Mu Yang reached out and held him in her arms, softly saying, "What's wrong with Xiaobao? Why are you unhappy?" Xiaobao was still unhappy. He twisted his little body and turned his back to Mu Yang, strongly expressing the feeling that baby is angry. Mu Yang said dejectedly, "Xiaobao is ignoring Nyang Qin. Does he not want Nyang Qin anymore? I won't." The little guy's anger didn't last for a moment before he was immediately tricked back by Mu Yang. Hearing the sadness in his Nyang Qin's voice, he immediately turns around and wraps his short arms around Mu Yang's neck. Xiaobao likes Nyang Qin the most. Mu Yang hugs her son's soft little body and kisses his cheek several times. Nyang Qin also likes Xiaobao the most. "So, Xiaobao, don't be angry at Nyang Qin, okay?" Chapter 1820. Xiaobao coyly nods and nestles on her, smelling his mother's fragrant scent. His eyelids are a little heavy. Ever since Daddy came back, Mommy has always been snatched away by him. Xiaobao hasn't slept with Mommy for a long time. Mommy's smell is so good, Mommy's embrace is so warm. Xiaobao likes it very much, he likes it the most in the world. Mommy, Xiaobao will also quickly become stronger. Protect, Mommy. Mu Yang looks at the sleeping Xiaobao in her arms, gently removes his hair bun, and gently pats his back. As long as this little baby is by her side, she feels full of strength, and the road ahead is bright and hopeful. However, as a medical skill, the Saint of Benevolence does have many flaws. If she uses it again in the future, she's afraid that sooner or later, Xiaobao, Di Mingju, or her fellow apprentices will discover it. Although the realm of stars can also treat illnesses, it takes too long and the effect isn't very good. Mu Yang sighs. The Shun musician inheritance is so magical. There are auxiliary skills, martial skills, alchemy, talismans, but how come there aren't any effective skills in the field of medicine? Qi Huang sneers, "You fool, don't you know that the most powerful skill of the Shun musicians is medicine? That Tianyi men wasn't even fit to carry shoes for the Shun music sect." Mu Yang is startled. "The most powerful is medicine? That can't be right. Then how come the medical skills I've learned now are of little value?" The current medical skills of the Shun musicians include mist dispersing, saint of benevolence, and echo recovery. Mist dispersing is mainly used to disintegrate inner demons, and echo recovery is used to restore spiritual power and internal force. Both belong to the medical category, but they don't have any real therapeutic functions. Saint of benevolence can treat illnesses, but it can be used to hurt oneself to save others, and it's just excessive anger. These three broken skills are useful for swallowing the surgery recorded in Bailey Liuin's notes and her own medical skills. Qi Huang hums twice. "That's because you haven't broken through the third stage of the Shun musician realm, so naturally you can't master the strongest skills of the Shun musician realm." The third stage. The third stage of the Shun musician realm is the first stage. Now she is already at the second stage of the 5th level, and to break through the third stage, she has to reach the 7th level. Thinking about it, it didn't seem that far from level 5 to level 7. Doesn't that mean that she will soon be able to master the powerful Shun musicians' medical skills? Qi Huang seems to have guessed what she's thinking, and he laughs disdainfully. "Jun Muyan, stop dreaming. Let's not talk about upgrading the Shun musician skills from the 5th level to the 6th. However, if one wanted to advance from the 6th level to the 7th level, there was no need to mention how difficult it was to break through. It's impossible for this damaged Tian Mo Qin to withstand the power of a level 7 Shun musician technique." Muyan stares blankly. "You mean? Jun Muyan, have you forgotten Ben Zun's reminder to hurry up and restore the Tian Mo Qin?" Qi Huang is quite delighted in her misfortune. "You don't take Ben Zun's words to heart. Now, if you want to rise to the 7th level of Shun musician and obtain a medical skill, you must first find the missing part of the Tian Mo Qin and fix it. Otherwise, you can continue to use Saint's benevolence in secret." Haha. After listening to Qi Huang's words, Mu Yang was really a little worried. She can still upgrade her Shun musician skills through diligent and bitter practice. Even if she's currently stuck at the peak of the fasting stage, there will always be a day when she can cross over. Chapter 1821. But where would she go to find the missing parts of the Tian Mo Qin? Tian Mo Qin needs to be repaired 3 times in total. The parts needed for these 3 restorations are placed in the Yanwu continent, the Xiuzhen continent, and the Xiuxian continent. The map in Bailey Liuin's notes only indicates the location of the Tian Mo Qin's restoration accessory on the Yanwu continent. But she had no information about the cultivation continent and the cultivation continent. How was she going to find them? Looking for a needle in a haystack? Moreover, because of the special identity of the Shun musician. According to the inherited memories left behind by Bailey Yinlu, the Shun musicians had offended all the sects in the 3 realms. He did it all over again. She even had some vague information in her mind. The polar domain was also a part of the people who shouted to kill the Shun musicians. Mu Yang doesn't know how much Di Mingju knows about her identity as a Shun musician. However, Qi Huang tried his best to stop her from confessing, and Qi Huang's identity could not be exposed in front of others. Therefore, she can't even tell Di Mingju about the matter of searching for the Tian Mo Qin's accessories. With her power alone, she could search the entire continent for something that she didn't even know what it was. Fuck, it would be a miracle if they could really find it. Oyu Yangqing had thought that she was going to die, but who knew that she would escape death? It was a blessing in disguise for him, as he was given the opportunity to stay in the Alcade branch school to recover from his injuries. Moreover, the person taking care of him was Ling Yusheng. Ouyang Qing was so happy that she almost couldn't tell which way was north. However, he soon realized that something was wrong. Although Ling Yusheng took care of him, he remained silent the entire time and didn't make eye contact with him. As soon as he left the room, He smiled and talked to the people of the Xiaoyaro sect. Ouyang Qing's heart was filled with apprehension and jealousy, fear and longing. Even her original joy had turned into torment. This time, he finally couldn't help but grab hold of Ling Yusheng, who was about to leave after changing his gauze. "Little Sheng, can you listen to me?" Ling Yusheng stopped and looked down at him, still not saying anything. Ouyang Qing gritted her teeth and said, "Little Sheng, what happened back then? I don't want to talk about what happened in the past." Ling Yusheng interrupted him with a cold expression and turned to leave. "I won't take what you said a few days ago to heart. I know you're just feeling guilty." Before he could finish, Ouyang Qing suddenly pulled him down onto the bed and roared like an enraged beast, "Fuck your guilt." Ling Yusheng jumped in fright when he saw the bleeding wounds on Ouyang Qing's body. He quickly said, "Ouyang Qing, are you crazy? Why aren't you lying down? Your wounds are going to split open." Ouyang Qing's body was severely injured due to Wei Tiangong's self-detonation. Even the circulation of spiritual energy in her dantian and meridians was obstructed. Therefore, his wounds could not be healed in a short period of time. He could only use medicinal pills to nurse his body's injuries. But Ouyang Qing pressed him down and refused to budge. In a hoarse voice she said, "Xiao Sheng, you don't know anything. Back then, before you confessed to me, I already had a different kind of feeling for you. But at that time, I was bound by morals and ethics. I was afraid of the fact that I had fallen in love with a man, and I was also afraid of dragging you into the abyss of eternal damnation. That's why I desperately wanted to avoid you, but, you're like an addiction that I can't get rid of. How can I avoid you? Afterwards, you were drugged and in a delirious state, you said that you liked me. I was simply wild with joy. My rationality and emotions were completely dominated by lust." Chapter 1822. You were the one who was drugged, but I was even crazier than you. There was only one thought in my mind, and that was to get you, to get the person I yearned for day and night, the person I loved madly, but never dared to touch. When I woke up the next day, my rationality returned, and I couldn't believe what I had done. Especially when I saw the scars on your body, I couldn't hide the joy in my heart, but at the same time, I was angry that I had dragged you down with me. But when you said that you didn't need me to take responsibility, these emotions all turned into anger. Ouyang Qing's voice was filled with unconcealable pain. I did something that I would never forgive myself for the rest of my life. I told you to get lost, and I pushed you out with my own hands. But as soon as you left, I regretted it. I went out to look for you like crazy, but Ouyang Mingzhu told me that you had left, gone to a faraway place, and would never return. I didn't believe it at first, but later on, even your father, brother, and even my father said that you had left, so I had no choice but to believe it. From then on, I couldn't stay at home for even a moment. There were traces of you everywhere, and if I stayed a moment longer, I felt that I would be tortured by regret and longing. Plop. Hot tears fell on Ling Yusheng's face, drop after drop. "Xiao Sheng, I really didn't know that Wei Mingzhu would be so crazy. I'm sorry. It was I who made you suffer so much, it was I who hurt you so badly. Xiao Sheng, I don't expect you to forgive me. I only ask that you allow me to use the rest of my life to make up for the harm I've done to you." Ling Yusheng fell silent and did not speak for a long time. To Ouyang Qing, every moment that Ling Yusheng was silent was like rolling in the 18th level of hell. He waited for Xiao Sheng's judgment with hope and despair. Finally, he heard the young man's hoarse voice. "What if your father wants to stop us from being together? What if your father doesn't allow me to live in this world?" Ouyang Qing's heart tightened, and he suddenly grabbed his wrist, saying without hesitation, "I've said it before, no matter who stays by your side, they can't hurt you without my permission. For this, even if I have to go against the heavens, even if I'm doomed eternally, I won't hesitate." He gritted his teeth, and his eyes revealed a deep struggle. "I don't know if my father was one of the people who hurt you back then. No matter what Ouyang Xiangdong did, he's still my father. I can't promise you that I won't kill him. But little Sheng, even if I die, I won't let him continue to hurt you. If he objects, I'll give up my identity as the Ouyang family's young master and roam the world with you. If you still want me. After she finished speaking, Ouyang Qing stared at Ling Yusheng without blinking. Her eyes were filled with anxiety, completely unlike the decisive senior Ouyang who had attracted the hearts of all the girls in the starry school. Instead, she looked like a pitiful wife who was afraid of being kicked out of the house. Poochie. Ling Yusheng was amused by his imagination. He flipped Ouyang Qing over onto the bed and said with a faint smile, "So, are you planning to marry into our Xiao Yarrow sect?" Ouyang Qing's eyes suddenly widened. She simply could not believe what she had heard. "Little Sheng, you're willing to forgive me? You're willing to be with me?" He secretly pinched his thigh. "It hurts, I'm not dreaming." Chapter 1823. Ling Yusheng was amused by his silly look. He blinked and said with a sly expression, "What? You don't want to marry into the Xiao Yarrow school?" No, I do." What a joke. As long as he could be with Xiaoxing again, he would be willing to marry into the Xiao Yarrow school, let alone marry into the Xiao Yarrow school. Ouyang Qing hugged the boy in his arms. Feeling the familiar breath of the boy, he felt that he wasn't dreaming. This was the greatest treasure of his life. He had lost his treasure once, but from now on, he would never lose it again. Oh, they're hugging each other. We're going to have a fifth sister-in-law in the future. Ha ha ha. Ouyang Qing, you idiot, why didn't you kiss her when you hugged her? Yeah, kiss her. Chatter came from the door. Although it was very low, Ling Yusheng had just activated his domain and his 5 senses were very sharp. How could he not hear it? Expressionlessly, he walked to the door and pulled it open. Instantly, several figures rushed in from the outside. Hello, fifth brother. Xiaowu, we're here to see if fifth sister-in-law has recovered. Muyan touched her nose. Fifth brother, what's your next plan? Do you want to go back to Cloud City? Back to Cloud City? Ling Yusheng was startled. The place that had once brought him joy and pain, did he still want to go back? Ouyang Qing grabbed his hand and said nervously, "Xiaoxing, go back with me. Don't you want to see your parents and brother?" Ling Yusheng smiled bitterly, "They won't want to see me. For the Ling family, his son was the shame of the whole family." Ouyang Qing said, "But a few years ago, I ran into your brother and he beat me up. He said that my Xiaoxing has been so obedient and sensible since he was a child. He would never force anything. It must be your Ouyang family's fault. He only hated that he couldn't get justice for his brother." Ling Yusheng was shocked. That's impossible. He still remembered the last time he saw his parents and brother. His parents were so sad and angry, and his brother told him to get out and never go back to the Ling family. Ouyang Qing said, "I swear to God, this is all true. Little Sheng, they might have chased you away on impulse back then, but now they regret it. Don't you want to see them again?" Ling Yusheng's heart was in a mess. He had never told anyone that Ouyang Xiangdong had coveted his innate spiritual root. Therefore, from the beginning, he had made up his mind that he would never return to Cloudpiercer City in this life. However, Ouyang Qing's words caused his heart to waver. Would his parents and brother, who had doted on him and protected him so much, really be so heartless to him? Maybe they really forgive me. Mu Yang suddenly said, "Fifth senior brother, aren't we going to Purple Cloud Realm's Dragon Soaring Academy to participate in the Deer Cry banquet? It just so happens that I also want to bring Little Bao around. If fifth senior brother doesn't mind, why don't you be our guide and let us experience the cloud-piercing city at the border of the azure blue world?" Leng Yumor also grinned and said, that's right. No matter what kind of monsters and demons are in cloud-piercing city, us brothers will accompany you. It's naturally good if no one comes to cause trouble, but if there are really blind people who want to deal with fifth senior brother, we'll let them experience what the unfettered 7 devils are. Chapter 1824. Cough cough. Fourth senior sister, Keep a low profile. We are clearly the Carefree 7, the Carefree 7 heroes. How did we become the Carefree 7 devils? Ha ha ha. That's because our Xiao Yarrow sect's most powerful disciple is our junior sister, nicknamed the female demon. Since junior sister is a demon, then we, the unfettered 7, can only accompany junior sister in becoming a demon. Mu Yang pressed the blue veins on her forehead. She didn't want the title of she-devil at all, nor did she want to be one of the 7 devils of freedom. Thank you. Listening to the words of Mu Yang and his fellow apprentices, Ling Yusheng's eyes brighten up with a bright light. All the hesitation and fear in his heart seemed to have been blown away by a gust of wind. It was as if, as long as he had these senior and junior brothers and sisters by his side, as long as he was still a member of the unfettered 7, he would never have to be afraid or indecisive. Ling Yusheng composed himself and said in a deep voice, "All right, let's go to Cloudpiercer City." After so many years, he finally had the courage to return to that place and face the past and the future. During this period, the leaders of the 5 clans of the Azure Blue world stayed in the Starry School. On one hand, he wanted to ask Xiaobao for advice on how to improve the strength of his clan's little ancestors and unearth their innate talents. Secondly, he was shocked by the strength of the Carefree team and wanted to witness it with his own eyes. Today, when he heard that Yun Ruohan and Mu Yang had come to bid farewell to Meng Baichuan and leave for the Purple Cloud Realm in advance, he couldn't help but be stunned. Nailan Qing stroked his beard and said, "You guys are rushing to the Purple Cloud Realm so early. Are you trying to get used to the strength of the strong early? This is also good. Perhaps this time, the result of our Azure Blue domain in the Deercry Grand Banquet will not be at the bottom without any ability to resist." The people of the Xiaoyaro sect were stunned. Adapt to the strength of a powerful expert? However, before they could say anything, a young girl standing behind Nailan Qing couldn't help but say, "Grandpa, don't be alarmist. The Carefree team wasn't as weak as they used to be. They had God Yi, the strongest support, who could even defeat Tian Heibo, a nascent soul cultivator. Even if he went to the Purple Cloud Realm, he would be invincible. Why would he need to adapt to the strength of some expert?" Nailan Qing shook his head. "A frog at the bottom of a well, a frog at the bottom of a well. Dong you don't understand how powerful those geniuses from the Dragon Soaring Academy are." The girl who spoke was called Nailan Dongyun. She was also Nailan Qing's granddaughter and the youngest generation of the Nailan family. However, her talent was not as good as Nailan Yang's, so she did not receive as much attention as Nailan Yang. However, not only is Nailan Dongyun not jealous of Nailan Yang, she even shamelessly pesters Nailan Yang after learning that her little cousin is coming to see Muyan. Because she was a die-hard fan of Jun Muyan, Yi Liangchen, and the Xiao Yarrow 7 sons. Even Grandpa couldn't tolerate anyone who slandered his idol. What's wrong with being a genius? Were the Xiao Yarrow 7 not geniuses? I don't care. Great Godji, when you go to Longteng Academy, you must beat those arrogant fellows until they're looking for their teeth all over the ground. Nailan Qing awkwardly shows a wry smile towards Muyan and the others, and then solemnly says, "Miss Jun, do you know, in the entire Shozhen continent, how many people have awakened their domain before the age of 25? Then, without waiting for Mu Yang and the others to answer, he immediately said, "Less than 100 people. And of these 100 people, 90% were in the Purple Cloud Realm. And of the geniuses of the Purple Cloud domain, at least 30% will participate in the Deercry Grand Banquet." Hearing Nailan Qing's words, the faces of the people of the Xiao Yarrow sect and Mu Yang changed. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.